Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Jade Walle.
I'm Steve Hayes.
And Steve Hayes is apparently lost in a dark cave somewhere. We've got his audio, but we don't have his video here. So that's just the modern.
Coming on.
What was that?
I think it's coming on. The camera came on. Now I just have to get it to work.
Okay, well, he's having camera issues, but at least we can hear him and talk to him for a while, and hopefully he can get his. There we go.
There we are.
Now we made it. Well, I tell you what, I hate that Scarborough was not able to join us, but when you're trying to get four people across two time zones and everybody's got their own schedule and their own demands on their time, sometimes the logistics just don't work out too good. So Scarborough will be back with us next week, but I am delighted to have the both of you with us on what is a real, milestone moment here in FAIRtax Power Radio history. This is episode number 500. I mean,
wow.
I can't hardly wrap my mind around that.
That's incredible, Bob. That's such an achievement for the dedication and the fact that you make it fun this many times. That's pretty impressive.
All right. Well, I enjoy having the both of you, and having the two of you together here should be really fun. I really don't have an agenda planned out. I mean, other than just to sit here and have a pleasant conversation. So, guys, feel free to bring up anything you want. Jade, you look like you got something.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I was going to say you talking about the 500th episode is it makes you pause for a second, because I can't remember the first episode. I drove out. It was 30 degrees below. I drove all the way from Bangor, Maine to see you and Ron in Ocala, Florida. Ron Malero. Of course, I'm joking about the weather. I was already in Orlando for business and just drove up to see you guys. And goodness, that was way before episode 100, maybe in the 60s or 70s. And I got to meet you gentlemen, Bob, I want to say in 2017, but correct me if I'm wrong there. We could probably do some back of the envelope math and figure that out, but it's gone by quickly, and it's a real tribute to the dedication that you and Ron and now Bob Scarborough have to the cause. And I think if I put words in Steve's mouth, I'd probably say we hope soon, sometime very soon, that we won't need FAIRtax Power Radio anymore. It'll just be the
yes.
model.
I have been saying I would love to be put out of business by making the FAIRtax the law of the land. I mean, 500 episodes, that's almost 10 years worth. I mean, started as a audio only thing on a internet radio station, the Leading Edge Radio Network, and it evolved into what it is today. And then, of course, we lost Ron a couple of years ago, and Scarborough stepped in. But well, let's just kind of get going here. And I say I really don't have anything in mind to talk about, other than let's toss this question out to both of you to start with, and that is, we are approaching the end of President Trump's first year in his second term. There was a lot of excitement early in the year when the president was talking about he wanted to get rid of the income tax and replace the Internal Revenue Service with an External Revenue Service. Some of that talk seems to have died down a little bit. Steve, you especially know how slowly the wheels of government can turn sometimes. Are we still going to get this thing during this presidency?
I think so. I think there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for it to really become reality. One is that they have to get through all of this turmoil on the budget. They have to get through all of the assimilation of the one big bill. So that is going to take, likely, even if they do pass this 6-week extension, likely going to take, until the Thanksgiving break, to be honest with you, and maybe even further. And so the likelihood of things happening between now and December, end of January, let's say, are pretty low. However, we've got some really exciting things kind of happening that are aligning. We've got the one poll which showed a majority of Democrats, Republicans, and independents really want to get rid of the income tax. And they like the idea of a consumption tax. And the other thing is, on Monday, I'm talking along with Congressman John Linder and others with a gentleman named Matt Towery, who does some really impressive work on polling, about doing a poll for Georgia, because as you know, we've got a lot of momentum building in Georgia for them to replace the income tax with a state fair tax bill. So we're talking about that. That poll, I think, is going to be very helpful because it's going to show, I believe, overwhelming support. And that's all going to be going into January, February time, where, yes, everybody's worried about the midterms, and yes, they've got that, but they're also going to be looking for messages. And if we've got a couple of polls, we're going to do another one, national poll. If we've got some polls that show the growing support for this, I think we can probably entice the president to start, talking more about it. And that's what brings it to the forefront. It's not, unfortunately, even though, we all think that we can speak well about the issue, it really doesn't matter because we don't have the megaphone that the president has. And if he comes out for it, guaranteed we're going to get a huge amount of attention. So
Jade,
that's and then go ahead, Bob.
I was just ask Jade for his thoughts here.
Yeah.
Well, I would completely agree with Steve. I think President Trump is the key. And one of the things Steve and I have talked about a little bit, Bob, is that not too often in our lifetimes, or if ever, you see a true disruptor in office on either side of the aisle. And President Trump isn't afraid to go against the grain. And for doing this for 500 episodes, the fair tax is against the grain. There's so much inertia behind the income and the payroll tax system that you need someone with a backbone willing to stand up and declare something else is better, and just quite frankly, a little bit more common sense. It comes back to, I think we talked about this a long time ago, Bob, there's this it's hundreds of years old. There's this philosophy, it's called Occam's razor, and he came up with this idea that whatever is simpler, a little more straightforward, has fewer steps, is generally, not all the time, but generally going to be more excellent, better in whatever human capacity we're talking about. The fair tax is Occam's razor, the income tax is not. And you need someone like, to Steve's point, President Trump, a disruptor, to be able to shout it out. And again, I mean, Steve's talked about this a few times. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, he's floated what we call a trial balloon out there, talking about the External Revenue Service, talking about the times in American history prior to the income tax when we were prosperous and had no income tax whatsoever. They're putting it out there. We want them to go out there a level further, and it's our job to sell the fair tax, if you will, so that they say it's not just getting rid of the income tax, but what's step two? It's replacing it with, drum roll please, the fair tax. So that's where we're going, and I agree with Steve. That's the path, and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Indeed. Well, I think if we've got a recovering tax attorney and a practicing CPA behind us, we should have some momentum here. All right, Steve, did I interrupt you there? Go ahead and finish.
No, I was going to say, Jade's got some pretty exciting news about what we're doing with the board and how things are going to start moving forward for next year. So, Jade, you might want to bring that up.
Sure. Bob, we're looking to reconfigure somewhat the AFFT board to really attract the younger generation. In the wake of the tragedy with Charlie Kirk's assassination and everything, sometimes we forget the power of the youth. And there's a lot of youth movement and involvement out there, and there's some avenues, quite frankly, due to some of Steve's great networking and hard work, that we believe having more of a youth presence on the board will really expand the reach of AFFT and the fair tax. So we're looking to really affect some reconfigurations within, by the time this airs, it should be complete. So in October of 2025. And we're hoping that will be a stepping stone towards what Steve and I just talked about, that ultimate goal of getting that megaphone that the president has.
Now, you've got both a governing board and an advisory board. Are you looking at tweaking both of those, or? What's the deal here?
No, and I'll let Steve chime in. Advisory board will stay the same, the governing board, but also, maintain control. We just have a more youthful contingent of a working board, but the same existing board of directors would still govern the operations and the bylaws and everything to do with AFFT. Is that fair, Steve?
It's fair. And basically what is going to happen is that a lot of the people that are raising their hand and wanting to be on are going to be the kind of people that I believe, Bob, if this was to go on for another couple of years, would really take over the whole operation because they're that qualified. But I have hopes that that's not going to happen because in the next couple of years, we're going to get rid of the income tax and not have to have a group that does this. We'll put Bob doing a travel show or something, or a train show. and Jade and I will be, working on other things that we enjoy.
Yeah. This is my new Rubik's Cube with steam locomotives on it. So
nice.
Have to
Very
do it
nice.
like that.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Very nice. But I'm excited because it is going to open, but I'm really excited about the response we've gotten from some people that we've mentioned it to, and I think Jade has seen this too, is, hey, I'm in. I want to do this.
If I remember right, that Qantas Insight poll showed more support for the fair tax, or at least more awareness for the fair tax among the younger voters, which was really quite a surprise.
Absolutely. It's a very, very strong interest because, and think about it, they're not as embedded in the old system. People like you and I, Bob, lesser for Jade, but you and I have grown up under this suppressive system. Mm-hmm. And we've had to deal with it, and it became something that there was very little we could do about. We had to work in the framework. The younger people are coming out and they're starting to question lots of things. And one of them is, why in the world do you need a tax that takes my money before I get it and tells me what I have to pay when I may not want to do it the same way as my friend Bob or my friend Jade? And I think that's important, and that's why I believe we're having the success we are and why the poll said what it said.
Yeah, well, I remember Jade brought this young fellow on a while back, and he still, I assume, doesn't like the IRS and doesn't like the system that we're working under. Did you see that one, Steve? That was a really cool guy.
Yes.
And Bob, it surprised me that the survey, we can always learn something from a survey of 1,200 U.S. Registered voters. And one of the surprises was that the seniors weren't as excited. They're still excited about it, still want to replace the income tax, but not at the same levels as the youth. And personally, that surprised me a little bit. And Steve, I attribute it, what's that thing in war, like the Stockholm syndrome, which is basically what you're talking about. They've just been so browbeaten for 60, 70, 80 years that they're like, nothing else could really work. And it's actually sad to see that with the human condition, but there's a little bit of that going on. But I do love the youth. They are questioning everything. There's no ingrained system that they have to kiss the ring or take a knee to in their minds, which you got to love that trait. So maybe that can be and I bet, Steve, if we look back 10, 15 years when hustling and sweating for the fair tax, probably wouldn't have thought back then that it'd be the 18 to 34-year-old demographic that could be potentially pushing us over the finish line.
Yes. No, it's very true, Jade. And frankly, it's the thing that you just said in terms of openness to change. But, a lot of people, and I think Bob's seen this as well, a lot of people who are at the end of their life span in terms of working, let's just say not living, but working and being able to generate income, are very, very, very concerned about change. It's that old thing, that during the Depression, there was this thing, people are going to get more food and everything, with what we're trying to do. And the comment was, look, people don't eat tomorrow, they eat today. We need to do something today. And when you're in that part of your life, the change may look great on paper, but until they understand how it applies to them, it's very difficult because they don't really have in their minds the opportunity to do a lot of fixing. They've got limited options. And I think one of our challenges is going to be showing the older generation. And this is something that Bill Archer, when I was working with him in the 90s, used to bring up. He said, Steve, show people who have done the right thing. They've saved money for retirement. Not always in an IRA, but they've saved money, they've done this, that they're not going to get penalized by now having to spend that money and pay tax on it. They've already been taxed multiple times when they earned it, as it earned income. And he said, let's put in some type of a provision that allows someone who's up to $1 million of savings or whatever. His number was 300,000 back then, but it'd probably be 1 million today. And he said, let's just do that. And I said, Bill, you're the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. I think it's great. Let's talk to lender. Let's look at it. And basically that's the kind of thing maybe that would help get it over the line with those people, because they've got the family allowance, which covers their own initial spending. And then if you bring in the fact that, look, you want to buy that boat and sail, great. If you buy a used boat, you don't pay the FAIRtax. You have a choice. And if we give them on top of that an exemption on their savings up to a certain amount, it makes it more complicated. I agree. But, there's got to be a way to make that work to where all segments of society feel better. We know that for lower income people, it's a plus because of the family allowance and because they're not paying the payroll tax, which I wrote an article about I think Bob enjoyed my example of government bureaucracy, of how they took this no tax on tips thing and made it just a real jumble of stuff. But the important part is most of those people that Trump was trying to help, the single parent with 2 kids who's having to work at a job and get tips, are not really affected very much because they're still paying the payroll tax. So their tax burden really hasn't changed. They weren't paying income tax anyway because of child credits and things. So it's really on paper, you get to save on the first $25,000 in tips. Great. Who does it help? If you can believe this and explain why, it's the electrician who gets a $25,000 exemption on tips. It's the plumber. I mean, there's lots of categories you shake your head, but that's Washington bureaucracy, and that's how silly and stupid, frankly, the present system is.
Agreed.
Jade, where's corporate America on this? Are they you got people who have entire research departments that try to see 6 months to 12 months, 18 months down the line. Are they really seeing that there's likely to be a seismic shift in the way we collect taxes?
No, I'd answer that straight away. Not to that extent. There has been, let's just say, a little uncertainty and confusion with was the one big beautiful bill going to pass, and what would that mean? And tariffs. I think tariffs have taken more oxygen out of the room for corporate America on depending on your industry, how we plan, how we think about our next moves. How do we forecast our sales going up or down? I think, admittedly, although the Commerce Secretary, like we talked about, has put out the trial balloon, they're not meaningfully planning for this yet. So this will be, if we can really get this out into the center of attention in America, corporate America will then have to take notice and then start scratching their heads saying, how is this going to affect me? And luckily, I think Steve and I would answer, and you would too, that it's going to be a benefit to you. You're going to have reduced, burdensome regulations. You're not going to have payroll tax withholdings and remittances to your state and federal agencies that you have to do now. Some companies, Fortune 500, etc. I mean, they'll have entire floors of
Hmm.
tax accountants and payroll clerks, and you can automate some of that with some third-party services. Think ADP and Paychecks and things like that. But there's still a lot of work behind it, and you're actually going to see a cost reduction in corporate America should this become the law of the land, because you're just going to have less burden, not even to mention all the federal income tax outside of payroll tax, the federal income tax and research and tax departments. So I think if we can get over the shock of it in corporate America, they're gonna say, wait a minute, I don't have to deal with this anymore. Now, I'll pause, Bob, because you'll have some multinationals that'll still have certain international tax obligations and issues to deal with. So it's not if you're Coca-Cola and operating around the world, there's still other jurisdictions outside the US. So, but for most of corporate America, it's a clean sweep. It's going to be very
Yeah.
nice.
I would think they would love the stability that the fair tax would offer versus just the total unknown, shifting sand. It's never the same kind of nature we're dealing with now.
I
I think so.
completely agree.
Only thing, Jade, I will ask you, and this is coming from somebody who's met starting in 92 with a lot of the tax people for these major companies. There's a lot of, I think, let's just say ingrained resistance to this because there's going to be huge numbers of people who will have to be retrained or reused in different areas because the guy who's got a fiefdom, in effect, of tax professionals is not going to need those to the same extent. Yes, just like the fellow at Hewlett Packard told me 30 years ago, you put this in, it's not going to change the fact that I'm still going to need a lot of people because, just to your point, we deal overseas.
Yep.
But a lot of the corporate America is also resistant to that change. They've got this licked. The other thing, and this is much more cynical, but a fellow in an unguarded moment for one of the big companies told me, he said, look, we view the income tax system as a competitive advantage against competitors because most of them don't have the ability to have the big tax departments and all. So there is a lot of resistance, which isn't necessarily what anybody's going to say. Nobody's going to, oh no, I don't want to lose my job.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with Steve, Bob. And there'll be manufacturing reasons, but let's talk on both sides of the aisle. Let's talk the consultants and the big four public accounting firms and the mid-tier firms. There's going to be huge resistance, even though the business and being the tax haven of the world in the US is going to drive transactions and other work that CPAs and CPA firms do, financial statement audits, divestitures, acquisitions, carve-outs, you name it. There's going to be plenty of work, but they won't see that up front. And so all the accounting firms will come out against it, in my opinion. And then on the other side of the veil in corporate America, to Steve's point, I agree the knee-jerk reaction will be, wait a minute, what does this do to me? It's an obstacle.
Hmm. But Trump has got a big battering ram, and he knocked down that objection with the tariffs. And what are they going to say? No, we should let the other countries penalize us so that we can have a benefit. That is effectively what he put them in a corner. They have to say that. And they can all say, oh, it's going to raise prices, it's going to cause all this inflation, and you've got all of that. But the truth is, the reason why so many of them were opposed was not because of any of those stated facts, but because they felt that was going to give them less competitive advantage and reduce their profits. Because that Chinese manufacturer, they say, oh, he's just going to raise the prices. He's only going to raise the prices to the point where he's no longer competitive. He's got to be competitive. So he's going to have to absorb some of that. I'm talking about an exporter from China, exporter from Europe, anybody. So to the extent Samsung came out with new phones, people said, oh, they're going to be up 15 to 20%. They weren't. Not because the tariff didn't apply, but because Samsung absorbed it. because they knew that was going to be a price point very difficult. Apple did the same thing. So, it's a very interesting game that a lot of these people who have benefited from the unequal situation in years past are now having to confront it. And I think Trump has shown us that he has the willingness, not only the ability, to go right at it. And unfortunately, he can't sign an executive order getting rid of the income tax,
Be
because
nice.
he will. But effectively, I think that's, just reemphasizing the point, Bob, that Jade and I have made, and you and I have made before, is that the key to this is all of our listeners, all of the people involved in looking for change have to be thinking of ways that we can bring more attention on this to Trump and let him see it's a viable issue.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, I have really enjoyed talking with you guys over the past 10 years. Although, Steve, I think you've been around a tad longer than we've known Jade, but I still remember, Jade, the first time we ran across you, you wrote a small letter or something like that, 3 pages, single space. And Ron and I had some fun with that, and we're just really glad you came on board. And Steve, we certainly appreciate all the work you've done over the years trying to get the FAIRtax passed, but we are just about out of time here. So, gentlemen, I'll give you both like about 30 seconds for your closing thoughts. Jade, you go first.
Yeah, I know we're speaking to the choir with your audience, but to the extent you can bring someone else in to listen to this, and often, Bob, you ask me, well, what do you want to ask our listeners and our friends to do? I'd say write your congressperson. Try to get on their website. It's very difficult. They'll make it difficult for you, but be persistent and just tell them that you like the FAIRtax, if in fact you do. And if you have questions about it, reach out. You can always reach out to me. Virtually everyone I talk to about it, Bob, and we talked about this before, whether we're speaking at a university, it'll be literally 19 out of 20 hands will raise and say, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So it's easy to sell something when you have a good product. That's what salespeople always say. And luckily, Steve, Bob, all of us here, we've got a great product. So now we just got to go out and sell it. Part of that is contacting your Congress senator and Congress people.
Yep.
Okay, Steve, your last thoughts?
My last thoughts are that to tell you how much I think all of us appreciate what you and Ron and now Bob Scarborough are doing by keeping this message out every week. It takes incredible amount of time and persistence, and I just can't tell you how much it's appreciated, particularly by me, but I think by all the people who are involved in FAIRtax. So thanks very much. And the only thing I would add to what Jade said is you still got a telephone, and the thing they hate the most at these offices is when you actually call the office as a constituent, their local office, and say, I want to know what the so-and-so's position is on the FAIRtax and getting rid of the income tax. And you just do that and put it on your calendar. Do it once a week until they answer you. And they'll actually send it up to DC, and if they get enough calls, they'll actually have a call with the member and try to figure out an answer. So phones still work.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I hope we don't have to go another 10 years. But, if the Lord lets me live that long and I can still sit in front of a camera and talk about the FAIRtax, we'll be doing that because it's just something that we as a nation have got to have. There are a variety of reasons we got to have it. And say we've already used up our time here for this episode. Maybe we'll just have to come back and dig in a little bit more. But again, Jade, thank you so much for what you've done. Steve, thank you so much for what you've done. And that's going to have to wrap up this milestone 500th episode of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for being with us. We will catch you same time, same channel next week. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Jade Walle.
I'm Steve Hayes.
We are this week's FAIRtax guys, reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
You'll demand it. Yep.
So what do you need from me to get these taxes collected?
Glad you asked, because there is a fair amount of information you need to be aware of.
That's your tax plan?
Oh, no, this is just the revisions for this year's tax plan. What I need from you is you need to keep track of all of your income, as well as any taxes that you've already paid. Also, any gifts that you received or gifts you've given to churches or charities or individuals throughout the entire year. Do you do any side jobs?
Every now and again.
Great, because there's some more information about that right here. Everything you need to know right here. So just simply compile that, send it in to us. Be careful, make sure there's no mistakes. If we do find mistakes were made, we can fine you or, throw you in jail. So you might want to be aware of that.
And what do you need from me?
As an individual, nothing. As a business owner, or if you're doing side jobs, yes, you would have to collect taxes on that, but, it's all right here.
Can I get a copy of that?